Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is the height of arrogance and disrespect that when we're debating a motion around transparency, openness and accountability, that the Executive Office, with its 4 ministers, could not send one to respond to this debate, or even indeed in the suite of ministers we have in government, because we call on the whole executive. Any one could have answered on behalf of the executive, yet not one is here today to answer the criticisms that have been made. I'll give way.
Would the member agree that potentially the response from that empty glass sitting up there could be more beneficial?
Well, I think that's effectively what we are getting. And it highlights the point that is being made at this debate. As was alluded to by the proposer of the motion, we have an executive that says, we have the votes, we have the power, we don't have to. And if ever again I hear a minister say to me, we don't need legislation for this, this executive has shown if it is not required to do it, it will not do it. There is no respect, there is no accountability, there is no openness, and that has to change if we're to have a genuine, thriving democracy, if our devolution is to meet the standards of other devolved regions and indeed other parliaments. Accountability requires transparency. And for ministers to be accountable, we have to know about the decisions they're making and how they're making them. We have seen a number of issues over the summer that we would not even have known about were it not for investigative journalists bringing them to light. The appointment of David Gordon, yes, it was announced, but the process was kept hidden, only for the work of Sam McBride to uncover the mechanism used. The Brexit document, again, the proposer alluded to, freedom of information request, the legal responsibility ignored until it was convenient to publish the information. We've heard the First Minister say she never saw that document. Well, I put it to the First Minister. If I knew there was a referendum coming up that had such significance to Northern Ireland, I would be asking my officials, have you done any work on the outcomes of this? So there's 2 possibilities. The First Minister saw that document and chose not to publish it, or the First Minister never asked to see that document, and in which case she is not on top of her department in such a major issue.
Point of order, Mr Lyons.
It seems to me that Mr Agnew is accusing the First Minister of misleading the House with the comments that she made yesterday in regards to that document. Would the Speaker be able to rule on that?
I don't believe that is a point of order, Mr Lyons. You've made your point on the record. Mr Agnew.
And Mr Speaker, I made the point there was 2 possibilities. I didn't say which one was true. We've got the situation business cases in Northern Ireland, which are ordinarily published at Westminster, or not even in some times in existence. And I look at issues such again over the summer, the business case for the bailout of Derry City Airport, the bailout of the New York flight. Where did this money come from? Where was the business case? Where was the accountability to this Assembly? We are operating at lower standards than what we should expect of a devolved government. Coming to the amendment, Mr Speaker, this is, as a former member of the Standards and Privileges Committee, the issue of the Ministerial Code of Conduct came up time and time again. Indeed, I was checking the figures in the last mandate. The Standards and Privileges Committee received 5 complaints against ministers. On each occasion, we were unable to investigate and had to tell the complainant that that there was no process for which their complaint could be investigated. The only recourse for the general public is judicial review, which we know is prohibitively expensive for most people. We as members are held to the Northern Ireland Assembly Code of Conduct, and rightly so, and we have an independent process for investigations of complaints. And I would argue that on this, the ministers and the executive have nothing to fear, well, at least if they're acting with probity and integrity. Because we have had the situation, it worked against both the complainant and those complained of. We have the situation, I'll give one example because I made the allegation of a breach. when the now First Minister was Deputy Minister, she licensed an area for fracking. As it turned out, her husband owned land within that licensed area. I argued that that should have been declared. She argued it wasn't required. I argued that there had been a breach of the code. What is left is suspicion in the general public. The Minister, Arlene Foster, Minister for Enterprise she was then, can declare her innocence. I can allege her guilt, but we never get a conclusion. We never get satisfaction. If I'm making a spurious allegation, that should be brought into light. There should be an independent process, and I should be told, should be put in my place and told that was a scurrilous accusation. But equally, if a minister has acted inappropriately, there should be an independent, transparent process by which they're investigated, and they should be held, as members are, to account for their actions in the role of their minister, as a minister. What is the point of having a Ministerial Code of Conduct if there is no mechanism for investigating breaches of it? It effectively is not worth the paper it's written on. And we have, again, that's a historical case. We have, again, with the allegations around the Brexit document, and again, I come back to the point. I can't stand here and say with absolute certainty that the Ministerial Code has been broken. I suspect it has. But what I would say to the First and Deputy First Minister and to every other Executive Minister, open yourself up to independent, transparent and fair process. If you have done nothing wrong, then you have nothing to fear. That's what I hear from the opposite benches quite regularly. So if that is the case, why does the Executive not come forward with a proposed amendment to the Ministerial Code to initiate a process by which these allegations can be heard and adjudicated upon in an independent manner? And often the stumbling block in these cases is cost. Well, we already currently pay our Standards Commissioner in the region the overall cost of the role and its office, £60,000 a year. That could be the cost of a single judicial review that would have to be taken to investigate allegations of breaches of the Ministerial Code. There is a way of doing this. We can extend the role of the Standards Commissioner. We have the mechanism in place, we have the model in place, because it's how we investigate members. And what we cannot continue to have, if we're to meet the levels of democracy, accountability and transparency that we want, we cannot have the situation where I, as a member, am open to scrutiny, but a minister of our government is not open to the same level of scrutiny. I'll give way.
The member also accepts that there are a number of different accountability mechanisms that are set up under the Assembly, and one of those is the committee, and the committee legitimately scrutinises ministers. And the committee, well, the members may laugh, but there are procedures there, and the member has made some comments about the First Minister, Arlene Foster, and the First Minister did speak to the Chair and the Vice Chair of the Deputy Committee in relation to this matter. She made it clear, both publicly and to this House, that she considered that she had no conflict of interest, and she outlined that to the committee, a committee with the role to scrutinise that minister.
Well, I'm sure every criminal would love it just that they were able to go to the court and say, but I am sure I have done nothing wrong, Mr. Judge. Wouldn't that be a wonderful judicial system? Very briefly.
Isn't in fact the parallel? It would be like having the criminal law, but no courts to adjudicate whether or not there's been a breach. We have a ministerial code, but no process to adjudicate whether or not there's a breach. It's as farcical as that.
It is indeed, Mr. Speaker, and I repeat the point. The then Deputy Minister was very clear that she felt she had not breached the code. I was very clear.
Ask the member to conclude his remarks.
I will indeed. I was very clear that I felt that she had. What we need is a process to decide who is right.
I call Mr.